Welcome to Health Begins Inside, the podcast that explores the transformative power of holistic health and wellness. I'm Megan, and I'm so excited to have you join us today. Here at the South Carolina Center for Integrative Medicine, we believe that true healing starts from within, and we're here to share that journey with you. In today's episode, we're diving into the world of fad diets, nutrition, and healthy eating with a very special guest, Sarah Williamson, a certified holistic health coach practitioner and certified health coach. Sarah is passionate about guiding individuals towards sustainable, balanced eating habits that nourish both the body and mind. Together, we'll explore the pitfalls of popular fad diets, the importance of nutrition in maintaining overall health, and how to make mindful, lasting changes to our diets for long-term wellness. So, whether you've found yourself jumping from one diet trend to the next, or simply want to learn how to nourish your body in a way that feels right for you, this episode is packed with valuable insights you won't want to miss. Let's get started. Hello and welcome everyone to Health Begins Inside. I'm Megan, nurse practitioner here at South Carolina Center for Integrative Medicine. And today my special guest is Sarah Williamson, certified health coach, certified holistic health practitioner.
Yep.
And we're going to talk about fad diets.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to
me too.
jump into this because this is definitely something that's going all over social media.
Yes.
Right? So
Yes.
let's start with what is a fad diet?
Yeah.
And why are they becoming so popular despite the potential risks?
Yeah. So fad diets have actually kind of been around for a long time. It's not
Yes.
a new thing. But I kind of define a fad diet as something that promises quick results, right? So you see this diet where you, only drink lemonade for 12 weeks and you're going to lose 70 pounds or, something. I mean, that's wacky. That's not a real one, but usually they kind of promise quick results, and ordinarily they're very restrictive in some way. And so it's going to be, we remove an entire food group, or we can only eat a certain amount of this one particular type of nutrient or macronutrient. And so they end up being usually pretty easy to identify because they're so restrictive. And I think that one of the biggest reasons that they've become so popular is because, number one, for some people they work in the short term, right? And so people do see results, and so word of mouth, oh, hey, I have this friend who's doing this, crazy only eat eggs diet thing, and she lost 70 pounds, and so the promise of results. And then also societally, we've kind of gotten to a place where we appreciate things that happen quickly and we expect things to happen quickly. And you know as well as I do that when we're coaching patients and clients and people through, improving their health and really kind of getting to the root cause of why they're struggling with some of the things that they're struggling with, that's not a quick fix.
Right.
Yeah. And so I think a lot of people appreciate a fad diet because it's very fast results.
Right.
They're not long-standing results. They're not healthy results.
Right.
But they're fast. And
so what are some of the popular fad diets we're seeing right now?
Yeah. So one of the big ones is right now is the carnivore diet. That one's gained a lot of popularity here in the last couple of years.
It has.
Yeah. The others that we still are seeing are kind of the, ultra low carb diets. That one gained a lot of popularity about 10 years ago. And even prior to that, not so ultra low carb, but like Atkins and South Beach and and there's even all the cleanses that go around, right? Like the lemonade cleanse, and there's a bunch of, what do they call it? The master cleanse, I think. Those technically are considered fad diets also. So all of that to say there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. But yeah, the carnivore is like.
Let's dive into that.
Yeah. Oh. So
what's the premise of carnivore?
Yeah. So carnivore diet essentially is an animal only diet. Occasionally I'll run into someone that says that they're eating some dark leafy greens, but ordinarily they're not. So we're talking meat, mostly red meat, eggs, dairy products, cheese, of course, and then sometimes fish. Some people eat fish, some people don't. There are a lot of people that don't like it. Butter and those kinds of foods. And so, when you're looking at first off, the sustainability of that is like nil. You know, a lot of people, one of the kind of facets of the standard American diet is a really high saturated fat intake, right? And so when we kind of equate that to health, it can be very inflammatory. There's a lot of negative health implications for eating a diet that's very high in saturated fat. And on a carnivore diet, you just can't avoid that. If you're getting all of your sustained nutrition from animal products, you're going to have an exorbitant amount of saturated fat in the diet, which we know from, decades and decades and decades of research. It's not as bad as we used to think it is, but it's definitely not health promoting. And so we set ourselves up for significantly increased risk for cardiovascular disease. We are altering our microbiome in a way that is not sustainable for longevity and long-term health. We are removing all fiber from the diet.
Sarah loves fiber.
I do. I love it so much.
Let's talk about the alteration of the gut microbiome.
Yeah.
When we're missing that soluble fiber.
Yeah.
So what does it do?
So our gut bacteria feed solely on the things that we put in our bodies, right? And so when we have so many, and they all kind of eat different things. And certain bacteria eat animal products, certain bacteria eat, insoluble fiber, certain bacteria eat soluble fiber. So one of the big things that we see is a change in stooling, right? So if we're not having fiber in the diet, then we're not going to be moving our bowels effectively, which we know increases risk for GI cancers and all kinds of things. So that's kind of a whole other facet in and of itself that I can talk about.
We become toxic burden.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And we'll talk more about that at another episode.
Yeah. Yay. Which is also another one of my favorite subjects. But all of that to say, when we're not eliminating, we're not getting rid of waste, right? But then, the kind of general alteration of the microbiome, there are a lot of gut bacteria that solely feed on fiber that stop the production of harmful, I say harmful, but things that can promote cardiovascular disease like TMAO. So when we have gut bacteria, an abundance of gut bacteria that feeds solely on meat and high choline foods, so eggs and those kinds of things, they produce a substance called TMAO. And we know, and actually cardiovascular professionals are starting to test for TMAO now, which I think is super cool. But we know that TMAO increases your risk for developing cardiovascular disease. So increases blood clot risk, increases thereby heart attack and stroke risk. And one of the ways that we can stop TMAO production is actually through soluble fiber intake. So the gut bacteria that feed on soluble fiber release compounds that stop the production of TMAO. So the name of the game for just about everyone really and truly is balance.
Right.
It really is. And when we're, kind of diving a step further from that, we are altering the way our immune system functions. We're altering the way that we're breaking down food and extracting nutrients. And then we're literally at risk for becoming nutrient deficient.
What happens when we become nutrient deficient?
Yeah.
We talked about that before, you and I, like as far as the weight change. And
yes.
So.
Yep. And butyrate is a big one. The gut bacteria that produce butyrate feed on fiber. But there's a lot of, there are a lot of things. First and foremost, one of the things that we'll see when we become nutrient deficient is just that kind of general malaise, right? Like our cells can't function properly. We're not going to have, the energy stores like we should, energy levels like we should. Diets like that are inherently low in carbohydrates, right? And so our brain is going to feel sluggish. And we may feel better at first for a very short period of time, but then that stuff's going to start to set in. And then we definitely can have, storage of fat because our bodies use our fat. One of the reasons that we have fat is to store nutrition and vitamins and minerals, especially fat soluble vitamins like vitamin K and vitamin A. So when we're not taking those substances in regularly, those nutrients in regularly, the body's like, whoa, I don't know where the next place I'm going to get this XYZ thing is. So I'm not going to be willing to get rid of any of my fat because that's where I have it stored. And it's going to be very selective about how it releases that fat and those nutrients from that fat. So while we may lose weight initially, maybe, eventually, and it usually doesn't take too long, eventually we're going to start to store specifically that kind of yucky fat that we don't like, the brown fat that we don't like to, because that's where we keep nutrients. So if we're devoid in nutrition, we're not taking it in properly, we're going to have, decrease in cellular metabolism, which damages our mitochondria. And that's a whole other thing. But then we're also going to have this kind of storage of fat. So we have extra places to store nutrients.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when we're looking at the body's natural balance and long-term health, how do these fad diets impact that long-term? I mean, you kind of touched upon a couple things, but I think so specifically what we're seeing a lot, I think mostly in clinic now these days, is a lot of metabolic syndrome.
A lot. Yeah. So it kind of, long-term, it kind of breaks your metabolism.
Yeah.
The body's really adaptable, which is one of the reasons that we've survived as long as we have. I think if we weren't able to adapt as well as we do, we would not nearly have survived this long. All of that to say that, we kind of adapt to our environment and we adapt to the foods that we have available to us, right? And if we go a long period of time without needing to digest carbohydrates or needing to break down food to extract nutrition, we're not good at it anymore. And so we can then see, an increase in issues with, just generally the metabolism of carbohydrates. The other side of that is that saturated fat, there's a lot of study now that has come out in the last 5 to 10 years, showing that saturated fat has a direct impact on glucose metabolism. And there's a lot of suspicion, in the metabolic disease world these days that a very high saturated fat intake actually can compound or even be causational for some people, depending on their genetics, with metabolic disease. And so that's another factor too. Like we kind of forget how to digest that stuff and then, break it down appropriately. And then now this super high saturated fat, we've got this additional inflammation and we're just not metabolically healthy. And so when we inevitably fall off the wagon, because we're going to, that's just how it works, then we now don't know how to digest regular food anymore in a way that's, healthy and supportive of our kind of day-to-day life. Yeah.
So one of the other concerns about these fad diets is the implication of yo-yo dieting.
Yes. Yeah.
And you kind of just touched upon like how it alters our metabolics, but can you share how you start to see their ability to metabolize change?
Yeah. So we generally will see the kind of very common things like higher insulin levels with meals, higher fasting insulin. I think functionally we want it around 10, right? Yeah. And so we'll generally see it. Yeah. Generally we see it, with people who are, because they come to us trying to actively fix their metabolism, right? Like they've had a problem for a long time and now we're getting to a place where it's become an issue. And so they're actively trying to fix it. So we see really high fasting insulins. But yeah, we see that. We see, higher A1C, higher fasting glucose. But then the way that they feel, they're tired, right? They eat carbohydrates and then they need a nap.
They crash.
Yeah, big time. And then too comes some education with like, okay, well, are we going back to eating, the way that we were before, which is probably not the best, right? And so, we have that simple carbohydrate intake that's a culprit. And then now we can't process that. It's even worse than it was before. And so now we're really feeling that. Brain fog is another big one that we see a lot. There's a lot of, and then just kind of overall total body health, weight, inappropriate weight gain. You're more likely to gain more weight. So specifically with a low carbohydrate diet, you're more likely to gain when you fall off the wagon. You're going to gain more weight than you lost. Not everyone, but a lot of people do. So we just your body's just kind of like, ugh. Like I don't really know how to do this anymore.
You had also shared with me in some of our nutritional conversations is that on average, if someone was successful in getting weight loss initially, even with a restrictive diet of sorts, that sustainability would probably be no longer than 5 years.
Yes. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's so discouraging to hear that because some people work so hard to get those efforts in, but ultimately we're still looking to make sure that even though we are achieving it, it is a sustainable achievement.
Yep.
So let's talk about like what sustainability would look like for someone instead of this yo-yo dieting or only eating a certain material, because restrictive dieting is just that. It is restrictive.
Yes.
And it won't last.
No, it doesn't.
We're not built to do that.
Yeah.
So,
and that kind of 5-year mark, I'm glad that you mentioned that. That kind of 5-year mark is, even true for some people who have sustainable, they have appropriate weight loss. We consider, kind of appropriate weight loss to be a pound a week.
yes, I'm glad you mentioned this.
Yeah.
Because this goes against all the fad dieting, right?
It does.
Like,
and
that
it's a big
promises
misconception. Yeah.
extreme weight loss quickly, but that's not safe.
No. And people often feel like if they're not losing 10 pounds a month, that they're doing it wrong, So we consider, just to clear the air, we consider appropriate weight loss, average weight loss is 1 pound a week. So that's 4 pounds a month.
That's normal.
4 pounds a month. Yeah. Accelerated weight loss is considered 2 pounds a week. So 8 pounds a month. When people often start losing weight, oftentimes in the beginning, they'll lose a lot more faster, which is not abnormal. But that happens because a lot of the time that's inflammation, it's water weight, it's not true fat loss, right? And then also with weight loss, regardless of what you're doing, you're going to lose a little bit of muscle. So even if we're working out, even if we're eating high protein, we're doing all the muscle preservation things, we are still going to lose a little bit of muscle. Mm-hmm. So anytime I'm talking about dieting, or I hate that word,
we'll talk about that.
Yeah, but anytime we're talking about, changing eating habits, sustainable lifestyles, those kinds of things, those things happen. It just happens. So I like to clear the air on that it's, it's not this ultra fast. That's not normal, right? And that we are going to lose a little bit of muscle. It just kind of happens that way. So when we talk about kind of what does sustainable eating look like, one of the big things is, and this is so simple and everyone giggles at me when I say this, but can you do it? Can you do it? If it's not affordable for you, that is not sustainable, right? If you work like I work, I'm here usually 8:30 to 6 most days. Sometimes I'm able to leave at 5, which is great. But by the time I get home, then I have to make dinner for my family and yada, yada. So spending 2 hours preparing a meal on a Tuesday is not sustainable for me. It's just not. So one of my jobs, one of the things that I like to do is help my patients and my clients figure out what that sustainability looks like individually for them, right? So we look at finances. I mean, you don't have to tell me your finances, but financially, what are some things that we can make sure fit in your budget? I have a lot of people tell me that financially it's a challenge, and that's very common. Are you going to actually cook the things, right?
Yeah.
It's another thing. And so sustainability looks like, are you able to do it? Is it nutritionally balanced, right? So are we getting carbohydrates? Are we getting fats? Are we getting proteins? And then are we also getting micronutrition, which is the vitamins and minerals and the things that we usually get from plants?
Nice plug.
Yeah, too terribly many from other places. You can a little bit, but not much. So, and then, some people like to meal prep. That's sustainable for them. I am not a meal prep person. If you see me meal prepping, you better ask me why, because something's happening. And so, that's one of the reasons that I appreciate when people do come to work with me for stuff like that, because we can usually we can kind of hash it out for them. Mm-hmm. But generally, general recommendations, can you do it? Is it sustainable for you individually? Is it nutritionally balanced? Does it include all of the nutrition that you need in terms of micro and macronutrients? And then is your weight loss sustainable in terms of how fast are we losing weight, right? If we're losing weight too fast, then we need to look at, okay, are we getting enough calories? Are we getting enough protein? Are we getting enough yada, yada, yada? Mm-hmm. If we're not losing weight as quickly as maybe we would expect, given how you're eating, then maybe we can look at, are there places maybe we do need to dial it back just a little bit, right? And everybody's different. Everybody's body's different. Everybody's metabolism is different. Fortunately and unfortunately, nutrition isn't a one size fits all thing.
That's true.
Yeah, it's not. So, but sustainability is very important in terms of keeping weight loss off, right? So the speed with which we lose weight matters. And then also, is this something that I can do for the rest of my life? If it works for me to lose weight, it'll work for me to keep it off.
Yeah. And part of kind of like marrying this together is that we also look at their health implications, right? Like,
absolutely.
Because every single person has a different health implication.
Yes.
And when I mean that, like, I'm like health conditions, mm-hmm. and that can directly impact their nutritional deficiencies or absorptions. Yep. I mean, gut health is probably the biggest thing we combat on a day-to-day in our clinic.
Yep.
Because the standard American diet is so inflammatory that we are literally spending the first 3 months taking care of that patient and literally just healing their gut.
Yep. Before they can even absorb nutrients
Correct.
in a way that's going to promote effective weight loss, sustainable weight loss. Yeah.
We spend the first 3 months with you just healing your gut.
Yep.
And then all the while teaching you how to appropriately eat and nurture
because
your body.
That's also a part of that gut healing, protocol, right? Is making sure we're getting the fibers to sustain the microbiome, making sure we're getting the nutrients as much as we can. And really during that time, I often will recommend a hypernutrient dense diet. So let's eat more nutrients than we actually need.
Because we love antioxidants.
We do love antioxidants.
And they're not only, but mainly found in our plant-based.
Yeah, plant-based foods, colored foods.
Yeah, the more beautiful rainbows that you eat. And that's why we always tell you to eat the rainbow, is because those are the more antioxidant dense items.
And they all do different stuff.
They do. Absolutely.
They're really cool.
So my next favorite topic about is the mental and emotional components that are tied around these fad diets and social media.
Yeah.
I mean, when we're looking at how this is impacting our, not only just our physical health, but this is impacting our emotional and mental health.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's groups like specifically, like you discussed, young women. Yeah.
Yep. So first of all, if you've ever had a visit with me or you've ever been in my office and I have not talked to you about your mental health, I'm sorry. That is one of the first things I usually talk about with people, especially when we talk about care plans and we're talking about like, how are we moving forward, and really and truly, as far as I'm concerned, the sicker you are, the more you need it. Right.
Absolutely.
Like that's kind of I personally have been through my own healing journey, and that was a really big part of my healing journey was the kind of mental health side of things. So that's a huge deal in my opinion. And then when we talk about, especially that group of young women, that's really kind of a niche group, that I think everyone that's ever been a young woman or is a young woman has felt the burden of maybe not having the body that we're expected to have, or that, society tells us is what we should look like. And, all of the things, societal, social implications. But the big thing that I see kind of in practice and have done myself as well, I'll see, so-and-so's doing this. I did a keto diet for a very short period of time, many, many years ago. Everybody that I knew that had done a ketogenic diet, and I was still working at the fire department at that time. And so a bunch of firemen were doing the keto diet and they were working out and they were putting on all this muscle and they were losing weight and they're men, right? They're men. Which is a whole other thing.
A woman cannot compare herself to a man.
She can't. Genetics
are different.
Absolutely.
Hormones are different.
Yep. Metabolism's different. Yep. So, but I was seeing them have all these results, and being the only woman that worked out of my fire hall, that was kind of my basis for comparison. Right. And so I decided at that point that I was going to go on a ketogenic diet. I lost a total of 7 pounds.
But 7 pounds
is 7 pounds, right? But here are these men who are losing, tons of weight. They're putting on tons of muscle. Like, they look great. Right. And I'm over here with my 7 pounds. And it was really discouraging. And fortunately for me, I'm the kind of person that's like, okay, this isn't for me, right? But a lot of people aren't. And so they'll have a friend who says, oh, I did this thing and I lost 35 pounds and I feel great. And they're glowing and they look wonderful, all the things. And then you try it and it doesn't work for you, or you feel worse, or you lose the weight and then you gain it back, or whatever that looks like. That is really, really discouraging.
Absolutely.
And it's very easy to go from I'm discouraged to something is wrong with my body, right? Something is wrong with my body. Something is wrong with me. I don't understand why I'm overweight. I don't understand why I can't lose weight. And it's still so taboo these days for people to seek help, specifically when we talk about weight loss. And I don't know if you've ever been a victim, but I have been a victim of, oh, it's just because you need to lose 30 pounds.
Oh, absolutely. I've definitely had doctors tell me that.
And so, especially as women, and not to say that men don't deal with that, I'm sure that they do, but I can only speak for being a woman, but as a woman, I go in and I say, I'm having this issue. And they're like, oh, you lose 30 pounds, you'll be fine. And so, of course, then we don't want to talk to anyone
And you
about
get so
that.
frustrated because you're like, I have tried.
Right. And so it's no wonder that we turn to fad diets. It's no wonder that we have this, this perspective that something is wrong with us. Because if this, medical provider who has the education and has the knowledge and talks to people all day long, is telling me that this is the thing that I need to do, then something's wrong with me because I can't do it. Right. So there are a lot of really, big considerations when we talk about mental health. And then kind of going back to the fad diet side of things, then when we talk about nutritional deficiencies, because we're following a fad diet, that can directly impact your mental health.
Oh my
Full
gosh.
stop. Like
vitamin D.
Yes.
Vitamin B's.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Yes.
And we'll see changes in our skin because we have, maybe are lacking vitamin A. Carrots are higher in carbohydrates. So a lot of ketogenic diets don't include carrots. And that's one of the biggest places that we get the vitamin A, like beta carotene.
Yeah.
Which is great for skin health and eye. Like there's all of these things. So there are, beyond just the nutritional deficiencies and the physiologic changes that we can see in terms of metabolism and all of those things, there's a ton of mental health implications that can come, not just from, being discouraged and feeling some type of way about, what's happening with people around you and it's not happening with you, but then also, again, that, the nutrient depletion that can happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a big deal.
I agree with you. I 100% feel like, and when I've had physicians in the past tell me, you just need to lose weight.
Yes.
There was an interesting fact that I learned from another physician who actually went to Congress to speak on the fact that our American diets are killing us.
Good for them.
And she actually pointed out that in medical school, physicians only receive 20 hours of nutritional education. Just 20 hours, no more than that. And that's over their 4-year medical school training. And so therefore, who are they to then tell the patients how to diet? Because that is not enough education. Especially for a lot of insurance companies, we don't cover nutritional education. And so we're sort of stuck in this cyclical problem of the doctor's supposed to tell us what to do, but they don't have the education to do it. The people who have the resources and education, insurances don't pay for. And so then what? You're not informed. You have no idea where to find information from. And so where do you go? Social media
and the internet. That's right. Well, and it's really interesting. Like Blue Cross, for example, they have health coaches available to their people, which I think is fantastic. They're not dietitians. They're not nutritionists, which is fine. I'm also not a dietitian or a nutritionist. I'm a health coach. But I think that that's a better resource than nothing.
Correct.
And some, like the American Diabetes Association has a whole program now that's free, which is actually it's really good. It really is, but you have to be diabetic to qualify for it. But there are a lot of resources out there now, but they're not advertised. I'm highly suspicious of a lot of people, maybe not everyone, but a lot of people on social media who are, really throwing all of this information out there. And I don't want to say, flat out that all of them are unqualified. I mean, a nutritionist or a dietitian may look at someone like me and say, well, she's not a nutritionist or a dietitian. Do we know? Where are they getting their information? If I am recommending something, then it's because I read it in a study, or I have, read hours and hours about it. It's not just something, I don't recommend things just kind of willy-nilly off the cuff. People who are on social media and recommending these things, it's because they are trying to make money off of you in some capacity. So they have a supplement brand, or they have this protein powder is going to make you gain 40 pounds of muscle and your body fat will be less than 1%, like whatever. And so I'm always cautious of those people. And even some programs, like, not to crap on E2M, but it's very restrictive. It's a lot of exercise. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. And a lot of people have done it. And I've seen a lot of people do really well with it, but it's not sustainable for them.
And as soon as they come off, they gain the weight
back. And there's a lot of, and I don't mind that one as much because it does eventually work all of those good foods back in. But, it's very restrictive in the beginning, and we're significantly, taking down the amount of nutrition that we're taking in, and also significantly increasing the amount of work we're putting out. The exercises are very, very hard. I mean, they're hard. It's a lot of working out. And so, people just don't oftentimes I don't feel good. It's really hard to keep up with. Anyway, so there's definitely a really big push on social media in the health and wellness world, even beyond fad dieting. I mean, there's just so many things, so many things.
So if we were to caution our viewers about social media and fad dieting, what are some of the red flags? And I think you've probably said it, but I want you to say it one more time when it comes to looking at these fad diets.
Yeah. So if it promises you these like exorbitant results in a very fast amount of time, then I would stay away from that. If it's ultra restrictive, so if we're looking at, taking out, other than sugar, I mean, sugar, we should probably be eating less anyway. But if we're taking out whole food groups, if we're, restricting our carbohydrate intake, for example, or whatever, to this, really crazy strict amount of carbs that feels like it's not doable, then I would avoid that. Or at the very least, bring it to us. Talk to us about it. Hey, I found this thing. What do you think for me individually? That's always my recommendation. If you have any questions about it, if you're unsure about it, if you don't know if it's something that's healthy or not, or sustainable for you or not, then bring it to us.
Yeah.
We'll be happy to help you hash it out.
And many times we're using these diets. I hate to use that, but okay, let's change that, because I'm going to explain it. Many times we're using them as therapeutic food plans.
Correct.
That's the word I like.
Yes.
Therapeutic food plans. So if I have put somebody on a carnivore diet, it would be for a scheduled amount of time for a specific conditional reason that I see when they come into the clinic, right? And same thing if I have to do a ketogenic diet, maybe let's just say maybe they have PCOS and we're struggling with some cysts on the ovaries, and I want to try to get those cysts to go away rather rapidly, and then bring the hormones a little bit more balanced, and then we talk about nutrition. After that, right? And same thing with the carnivore diet. I've had patients come in with the most lowest LDL cholesterol.
Cholesterol.
And you're like, oh, you don't need anything that's saturated. We do need that in our body. So let's start putting that back in for a little bit. But then we eventually remove that away, right?
Yes.
So,
and even sometimes too, I'll even go to Megan and I'll be like, okay, you sent this patient to me. Let's talk about it, because I want to make sure that I'm on the same page, right? And that's one of the things that I love about working at this practice and getting to work with you and the other providers, is that we're all very communicative. We're very open. We talk to each other. We're very, everyone's involved in your care. And it's really, I love that. I think at the most, it benefits the patient, but
absolutely,
as a practitioner and learning and, all the things, I don't think that there's ever a day that goes by that I don't learn something, and I like the relationship that we have.
Yeah, it happens. I love it too.
Grow,
There's a diet that you have shared with me.
Oh, yes.
That I think is very intriguing. And it's getting a trendy fad diet name behind it. But it actually has a good principle to it. So you want to share that with us?
Yeah. So it is technically a fad diet, technically. And I won't say in the same way that it promises fast results, but I think that, it seems to be very balanced. It's the 90-50-30 or 90-30-50 approach. And essentially that means 90 grams of protein. So, and this is for women, we alter it for men, or even women who are smaller in stature, they need less protein, whatever. So 90 grams of protein, 50 grams of fat. And that's, we typically encourage fats from good sources. So like olive oil, avocado oil, nuts, seeds, even meat counts. And then fattier foods like avocado, whole avocado. And then this is my favorite part, 30 grams of fiber. And I love that the focus there is on fiber, because if we're putting the focus on fiber, and I don't know how many visit summaries I type out that say focus on fiber. And literally I say that every day, all the time, focus on fiber. But if we're putting the focus on fiber, there's no way, and I almost want to try it myself one day just to see what it would be like, but there's
to try to get it in.
Yes, but there's no way that you would be able to supplement 30 grams of fiber. You would never poop. Like I do almost want to try one day just to see how hard it would be, how much psyllium husk I would have to drink to get it. But anyway, so because of that, then we have to consume the foods that are high in fiber. And so those tend to be beans, my favorite food group, beans, vegetables, fruits, whole grains, foods that are really nutrient dense. We're not getting fiber from meat. We're not getting fiber from eggs. We're not getting fiber from, deli sandwiches, right? We're getting it from whole grain foods, from beans, from vegetables, from fruits. So it actually ends up being very balanced.
Mm-hmm.
It ends up being very balanced. In order for you to eat 30 grams of fiber, that's quite a lot of plant foods, which is great. So we get a good amount of nutrients, really good micronutrition, and then we get a decent amount of protein, which is also going to get us our saturated fats and all the things. And then just the kind of general fats are going to be our, polyunsaturated fatty acids, monounsaturated fatty acids. So we're going to get all the things. I love it. I've had a few patients on it fairly recently, and everyone seems to be doing really well.
Right.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good.
It sounds more balanced, which is why I think
Yes.
we can take it off the Fad Diet list, even though it's very trendy.
It is.
And that's okay. Trendy doesn't necessarily mean that it's a fad diet.
No, agreed. Yeah.
So
it doesn't have the same, promising fast results and all of it.
Because it's looking for sustainability and it's looking for balancing.
Yes.
So those are the things that I like about it.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited that you shared that with us.
Yeah, I love it. It's my favorite. One thing that I do want to caution people on to, just kind of moving to the side of that, is if you're the kind of person that counting nutrients, counting macros, counting fiber, counting those things is challenging for you. There are a couple resources that we usually recommend. One of them is, I think you like Chronometer, right?
I do.
Or
Chronometer,
however you say it. And then I have always just used MyFitnessPal. They have a paid version where you can get the breakdown of all the actual micronutrients that you take in. I don't usually pay for it because I'm cheap, but you can if you want to. But it's a good, those are good to use. They're free, and you can kind of just get an idea of what you're taking in daily. But if you're the kind of person that tracking is just not your thing, or we have a history of disordered eating, or we have, other things that will make tracking harder for you, or cause you more stress, I should say, then don't. Don't. And I can help you through that too. If we really need to kind of figure out what does 30 grams of fiber look like in a day, but I'm not going to count it, then come see me and we can talk about that. But yeah, so I just like to plug that in because a lot of people think that counting is absolutely necessary, and it's not. If you want to, those are good places to start, but if you don't want to, then it's not necessary. It's fine. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for spending your time with us today. We're so excited to learn a little bit more about fad diets and the risks behind them, but also some benefits of other things that they can offer us. So stay tuned with us for our next episode, in which we talk about detoxification.
Ooh.
Yes. Thank you so much,
excited
Sarah.
About that one. Thank you for having me.
That's a wrap for this episode of Health Begins Inside. A huge thank you to our guest, Sarah Williamson, for sharing her insights on fad diets and nutrition, helping us separate fact from fiction when it truly comes to healthy eating. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who might find it helpful. Join us next time as we dive into the world of detoxification, what works, what doesn't, and how to truly support your body's natural detox processes. You won't want to miss it. Until then, take care, nourish your body, and remember, true health begins inside.